Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we are going to be going over my Week 12 waiver wire ads for fantasy football in 2020. Inside of this video, we are going to be discussing players from running back, wide receiver, as well as the tight end position that I want to go ahead and get you guys to add on your roster before week number 12 begins. Obviously, some of these guys will have tougher kind of matchups, but they could also be guys that you put onto your lineup and you stash for a couple of weeks, and maybe they end up blowing up and having better games for the future. So week number 12, we're getting very, 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 very close to the fantasy football playoffs. So if you guys are trying to win that championship, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button. I post content every single day to help you guys win that 2020 fantasy football championship. Real quick before we get into it as well, I'd like to give you guys a quick word from my friends and my sponsor over at OverlayDFS.com. OverlayDFS.com offers a variety of fantasy football games on their website. They have the progressive tournaments as well as the matchup shop, but I like to highlight the matchup shops in these videos because they are so simple to play. How it works, you go on OverlayDFS.com, you sign up, and then you go to the matchup shop page and you have these matchups. Who's going to score more fantasy points? Jared Goff plus 2.5 fantasy points, or Tampa Bay Tom Brady minus 2.5 fantasy points? Who scores more points? Mike Evans minus 1.5, or AB plus 1.5 fantasy points? You click on whoever you want to pick. Say you want to pick AB plus 1.5 fantasy points over Mike Evans. You can bet as much money as you want. You can throw $200 down on this matchup, or you can bet as low as $1 on these matchups. You can make of it as you want. It's very simple. You guys do all this research all week long to win your fantasy football matchups. Why not win some extra cash as well? OverlayDFS.com, link down below in the description. And we are back. Let's get into it. Week 12 waiver wire rankings. This week, actually, there is 0 teams on bye, which seems pretty abnormal for this far into the season. Then next week, there are the last round of buys in week number 13. To start off the video, we got running backs to begin. Wayne Gallman is my number 1 running back to add this week of the New York Football Giants at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals got absolutely trounced last week, and now without Joe Burrow, this team is going to be crawling in these games, and the Giants seem to have risen to the occasion like my cock in the morning, and I think Wayne Gallman is going to be a big player for later into the season. Devontae Freeman likely will not return, at least for this game, and probably might miss games after this. Wayne Gallman's recent games has had 4 games over 13 PPR points. Last week, they had a bye, so his most recent game was Week 10 versus the Philadelphia Eagles. In that game, he had 18 rushes for 53 rushing yards, 2 tutties, 1 reception on 2 targets, 7 receiving yards, 19 PPR points, and 18.5 half PPR points. Now, I urged you guys last week in the waiver wire video to pick up Wayne Gallman before it was too late, because right now, a guy like Wayne Gallman is going to cost you your number 1 waiver priority, whereas last week, because he had the bye, you could have gotten him on the low on the cheap, but now he's going to be a guy that has a very simpleton matchup this week up against the Cincinnati Bengals that is going to do nasty things to that Bengals defense. I expect Wayne Gallman to have an amazing game again. Now, I don't expect him to score 2 fucking touchdowns again, but I do expect him to find the end zone, considering he's been doing that on a repeated game basis, and the fact that he's been scoring over 13 PPR points in his last 4 games has me very confident in Wayne Gallman for the future, as well in this matchup up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Next matchup here, our next running back here is Damien Harris, running back of the New England Deflatriots, going up against the Arizona Cardinals this week. Now, we saw Carlos Hyde run quite well and quite effectively up against the Arizona Cardinals last week, and he's not even a top-tier running back in the NFL. Now, I'm not saying that Harris is better than him, but I think he is. But Harris has been very productive thus far this season. 2 games in a row of over 12 PPR points, and now with sexy Rexy Burkhead going onto the IR due to a torn ACL, this bodes even better for Damien Harris. Last week, up against a not-so-hot run defense in the Houston Texans, he had 11 rushes for 43 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 1 reception on 2 targets, which may have been his first reception of the goddamn year, because they don't look for Damien Harris at all in the receiving game. 11 receiving yards, 12.4 PPR points, and 11.9 half PPR points. This isn't a simpleton cupcake matchup up against the Cardinals, but we saw, like I said last week, Carlos Hyde run pretty well against them. So I think Damien Harris could have yet another big game where he ends up scoring above 10 PPR points, and that's pretty much what you're asking for when you're picking up a running back off the waiver wire. Now, I know in many leagues he is going to be a guy that teams already have, or that maybe you already have. But at the end of the day, we're so deep into the season that you got to be scavenging the waiver wire. So maybe someone dropped Damien Harris a couple of weeks ago, and maybe you can find him and add him to your roster right now. If Harris isn't available, I'll tell you who probably is available, because I had this motherfucker, and I cut him in my leagues. James White, running back of the New England Patriots, also going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, White had done jack of all shit this season. The only thing he's done is bent you over the table and raw dogged you without the use of any lube. But as of recently, or not as of recently, as of yesterday, because Sexy Rexy Burkhead tore his ACL, White actually did something. Week 11 at the Houston Texans, he had 5 rushes for 19 yards, but that's not what you're looking for when you have James White. You're looking for that receiving work. He had 6 receptions on 9 targets. Very nice and great success. 64 receiving yards, 14.3 PPR points, and 11.3 half PPR points. This is what I expected of James White all season, but it turned out that Burkhead completely stole his fucking role. He was like Kirby in Super Smash Bros, and he fucking sucked in James White and became him. He was like the new and improved James White, but now they got to go back to old man James White, who is going to be effective in this offense up against the Arizona Cardinals. I expect that Cam Newton will continue to dump the ball off his way, but based on how James White and Cam Newton have worked all season, this is a prayer to the fantasy gods, but I hope that now James White, now that Burkhead is hurt, sadly, obviously that's a devastating injury. Hopefully he bounces back next year, but I hope James White is able to perform now in the case of Burkhead's injury. Next matchup here, next player is Gus Edwards, running back of the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, as I was actually recording this, I had to stop and look back at it. I had to do a reversal because I was going to record this, and then literally I look at my phone, and it says J.K. Dobbins and Ingram tested positive for the big Rona and will miss Thursday Night Football, the Thanksgiving game, one of the Thanksgiving games, the Baltimore Ravens versus the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. Last week, he was a complete and utter non-factor in this offense, but in games before, he was playing quite well. He just wasn't getting a lot of snap share. We saw J.K. Dobbins get a real big snap share in that game up against last week against the Tennessee Titans. But now Edwards is in the prime spot to be the number 1 head honcho back in that offense. They got rid of Alex Collins, a guy who could have sniffed up there and stole some touches, because now he is in Seattle. So week 11 versus the Tennessee Titans, he had 3 rushes, 6 rushing yards, 0.6 PPR points, and 0.6 half PPR points, which is obviously nothing to go ahead and call your mom about. Hey, Mom, Gus Edwards scored me fucking 0.6 PPR points. But in this matchup up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, while they have been pretty good up against the running back, they aren't necessarily as amazing as they were earlier in the season when they completely shut down Saquon Barkley. So I think that Gus Edwards will be fine, as well as the fact that he does get utilization in the receiving game. So I think Edwards will be a fine pickup for at least this week, considering Dobbins and Ingram are on the big Rona thing. And I think they may be able to return. They may be eligible to return their next game. But again, the Corona rules are so confusing that I personally have no fucking idea how it is going to work. But I know for a fact he is missing Thursday Night Football at the Pittsburgh Steelers. It could be a nice bye-week fill-in, even though there's no bye weeks this week, or just a nice fill-in if your running backs have been down bad. Now on to the next running back here. We got Jamaal Williams, running back of the Green Bay Packers, the Cheeseheads, versus the Chi-Town Bears. He's been pretty solid recently, even going behind Aaron Jones. It's not like Aaron Jones got hurt and that necessarily elevated Jamaal Williams' status up to the fucking moon. Aaron Jones has still been playing, and Jamaal Williams has been quite solid. Last week was actually his worst week as of recently, and he's looked pretty solid, at least last 3 games. Week 11 at the Indianapolis Colts, he had 5 rushes for 12 rushing yards. He had 1 reception on 2 targets for 4 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown, 8.6 PPR points and 8.1 half PPR points. This Green Bay Packers offense is potent at scoring NFL points, which results in your fantasy players scoring fantasy football points. Now, if Aaron Jones was to somehow go down, knock on wood, we hope that doesn't happen. If he was to go down, Jamaal Williams would skyrocket his value straight to the fucking moon, through the moon, and smack into Mars, go through Mars, and hit Uranus. But I don't actually think that's how the order of the planets work. Maybe I should have listened more I almost just said in Spanish class, but in science class. With that said, Jamaal Williams going up against the Chi-Town Bears. There's a lot worse players that you could throw into your lineup this week than Jamaal Williams. And I expect if Aaron Jones was to go down again, knock on wood, we hope it doesn't happen, could be very, very good for your lineup. Now, on to the final running back out of the week. That is Frank Gore, running back of the New York Football Jets, going up against the Miami Dolphins this week. Last week, we saw the Miami Dolphins, get a train ran on them by the running back group of Lindsey and Melvin Gordon. They got gushed through, and the Dolphins ultimately made a play to win the game. Fucking Van Ginkel knocks the ball out of Gordon's hand on the 1-yard line, because we all know Melvin Gordon loves fumbling on the 1-yard line. Shout out to all you Chargers fans. I know that is a sad moment in your lifetime, but with that said, he fumbles it, right? And it's like, now maybe we can win the game, and then the Dolphins put in Fitzpatrick, and they lose. You all know why? Because Ryan Fitzpatrick fucking sucks, but I digress. The Dolphins here, their run defense got fucked last week. I don't expect it to be an absolute pounding like it was last week against the Denver Broncos, but I think Frank Gore could run loose in this matchup if LaMichael P. Ryan does not end up suiting up. Now, if P. Ryan ends up playing, this pick pretty much goes out the window because P. Ryan was looking very effective before he ended up getting hurt. in that game up against the LA Chargers. So again, this is a tentative ad. This video is going out on Monday. On Tuesday, maybe we'll have a better idea on the Michael P. Ryan situation. Week 11 at the Los Angeles Chargers. Frank Gore had 14 rushes for 61 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 2 receptions on 2 targets for 10 receiving yards, 15.1 PPR points, and 14.1 half PPR points. So those are not numbers to scoff at. While this man has been playing since the football has been invented, Frank Gore does still have the potential to be productive, and especially up against the Dolphins defense that got a train ran through them via the running game. I think Frank Gore could be an exquisite add to your fantasy football lineup. Now, onto the wide receivers. If you guys have ended up enjoying this far, please make sure that you guys hit that subscribe button down below. We begin with Michael Pittman, wide receiver of the Indianapolis Colts, going up against the Tennessee Titans this week. The Tennessee Titans defense, not that great. They ultimately beat the Ravens last week in overtime in what was one of the better games of the week. And Derrick Henry, if you guys didn't see my tweet, if you guys follow me on Twitter, I retweeted this. Derrick Henry ran an L formation. He ran straight to the left and then straight gut up, and it looks like he ran a fucking L formation in that game-winning touchdown. He formed an L on top of the Baltimore Ravens head top. Michael Pittman has looked good 2 games in a row. It seems like he is the clear wide receiver 1 on this roster in Indianapolis, and if Phillip Rivers continues to kind of throw the ball a decent amount of times to him, Pittman has that big play upside. See how he only had 3 receptions on 3 targets. He was 3 for 3 like a free throw, 66 receiving yards, and 1 total touchdown, 15.6 PPR points, and 14.1 half PPR points. My issue with players like this is if they don't get an extreme amount of volume, they could still be productive. But what happens if 3 of those catches or 3 of those targets, 2 of them go bad? Then he has 1 catch. Maybe he doesn't score a touchdown. But with that said, with how kind of bad the wide receiver core looks on the waiver wire, Michael Pittman is definitely worth an add. Would I play him against Tennessee at this point? I feel confident enough to do it based upon his 2 good matchups the last 2 weeks. So Pittman is definitely a good add for this week. Next player here is Corey Davis, wide receiver of the Tennessee Titans at the Indianapolis Colts. Notice 2 guys in the same game going back-to-back. Michael Jordan, 96-97. Woo! Back-to-back like I'm on the cover of Lethal Weapon. All right, week 11 at the Baltimore Ravens. Corey Davis turned it on. He didn't play that great recently, but that was a good game. Now he gets the Colts, which is a tougher defense, I understand. But we saw the Packers kind of slice and dice their way through them like they were O.J. Simpson to his girlfriend. 5 receptions on 7 targets, 113 receiving yards, 16.3 PPR points, and 13.8 half PPR points. So if we saw the Packers play well, passing as well as rushing up against the Indianapolis Colts, I feel like the Titans can do it. Now, are the Titans fraud or not is definitely a question to note. Both the Ravens and the Titans seem like they could be either teams that fucking make it to the Super Bowl and potentially hoist the Lombardi Trophy, or seem like teams that can completely get their ass absolutely railed in week 1 of the playoffs. Which one will it be? I have no idea, but I think the Tennessee Titans play good here up against their rival in the Indianapolis Colts. The first time these guys played a couple weeks ago, it was a murder in the first half. The Tennessee Titans were dicking the Indianapolis Colts down, and then in the second half of the game, a switch completely flipped, and the Colts just ran through him. So let's see what happens in this matchup. I expect Corey Davis to have a bigger game this time against the Colts, but he played pretty solid last time these 2 teams faced off. Next wide receiver here is Cole Beasley, wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Last week, the Buffalo Bills had a bye week, so I don't have any stats for that, but the last time he played, week 10 at the Arizona Cardinals, he was peppered Salt Bay style with targets. 11 receptions, 13 targets, 109 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, 27.9 PPR points, and 22.4 half PPR points. That was like a fucking career game out of Cole Beasley, if I'm being honest with you. That was one of the best games I've ever seen this man put up in his career that I thought he's been playing in the NFL for like 12 years. He hasn't. It's been like 6 or 7 years or something, which is just weird when you think about Cole Beasley. You think he was playing back in the day of Troy fucking Aikman playing quarterback in Dallas. With that said, this is a juicy matchup up against the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers defense sucks cock. The New York Football Jets moseyed on in there, and it looked like Joe Flacco was Aaron Rodgers or something. That's how easily he was able to dissect that defense. I expect big man Josh Allen to be able to be even better in this game. I love this matchup up against the Chargers, and I love Cole Beasley this week. Next guy here is Allen Lazard, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears. Now, I know Allen Lazard completely took the shit right on your chest if you started him this week. I was kind of on starting him, right, because he's coming off the injury. Wasn't sure how he'd do against the Colts. He didn't do good. But MVS crucially fumbled the fucking ball at the end of the game to lose the Packers the game up against the Colts, a game they should have won. So what does this mean? This means that Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, will hold a vendetta against this motherfucker. He will see MVS running down the field, and he'll be like, I would rather throw it to the fucking moon because it has a better chance of not fumbling the ball than you do, MVS. So I think Allen Lazard's going to light it up now for the future. The Bears defense not looking amazing. Really isn't. Coming off the bye, who's going to be starting at the quarterback? It's going to be Kissing Titty Trubisky. Is Foles going to somehow play? I read Foles might be able to play. I have no idea. But I do know the Chicago offense sucks cock. The Green Bay Packers will be able to run a train on the Chicago Bears. I like Lazard in this matchup. Even after his disappointing Week 11 at Indianapolis, 2 receptions, 4 targets, 18 receiving yards, 3.8 PPR points, and 2.8 half PPR points. I just feel like MVS really disappointing. Aaron Rodgers last week will be a detriment to his fantasy football production in the future, which elevates Allen Lazard to the roof. Next wide receiver here, we got Tim Patrick, wide receiver of the Denver Broncos, going up against the New Orleans Saints this week. Now, this is more of an ad for the future because I'm very worried up against the New Orleans Saints. They bottlenecked the Atlanta Falcons last week. Week 11 versus Miami, Tim Patrick went hambony, 5 receptions, 8 targets, 119 receiving yards, 16.9 PPR points, and 14.4 half PPR points. Tim Patrick turned into fucking Julio Jones or something in this matchup up against my Dolphins, which was very sad for me. But at the end of the day, the Dolphins will bounce back, I hope. With that said, this is a tough matchup, 100%. But if Locke is one of those players that is just a fucking coin flip if he'll be good. Because Locke is either locked in horsecock Drew Lock or he's micro penis Lock, where he doesn't do anything. Example, last week he was horsecock Drew Lock. The week before against Atlanta, he was micro-penis Drew Lock. He threw like 4 interceptions. So which one will we see this week? Probably micro-penis Drew Lock. So I'm not too sure I want to start Tim Patrick, but he's definitely worth a ad if you need a guy to fly onto your bench that definitely has potential for the future. Jakobi Meyers is the next wide receiver here, and I believe the final wide receiver of the video. Meyers, wide receiver of the New England Patriots, put up a straight-up dud this week up against the Houston Texans. This week he gets the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I think his name is Demir Bird, fucking scored and did some sick bird celebration. If you guys are watching on the video, obviously if you're listening on podcast, you can't see it, but he did this. He's like, caw, motherfucker. And then him and Cam interlocked hands. They did the caw. It was some beautiful shit. But with that said, Jakobi Meyers was deflated like a football in New England in that matchup against the Indianapolis Colts. But instead, he was playing the Houston Texans. 3 receptions on 3 targets, 38 receiving yards, 6.8 PPR points, and 5.3 half PPR points. Sure, he wasn't productive, but he caught every single ball thrown his way, and I don't expect Jakobi Meyers to now just get fucking thrown out of this offense and he'll be irrelevant for the rest of the season. No, that is not the case. People are going to be pissed at Jakobi Meyers and cut him and add Damien Bird. You want to know why? Because people over-exaggerate or over-analyze one game. They will throw out the other games where Jakobi Meyers was skull-fucking defenses, and instead just think of last week up against the Houston Texans. So don't fret on Jakobi Meyers. If you still have him, hold him. And if you can pick him up, I like him this week up against the Arizona Cardinals. Now onto the tight end section of the video. So again, if you guys have ended up enjoying, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below if you're new. And if you're not new, please make sure to hit that like button. Dallas Goedert, tight end of the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Seattle Seahawks this week. And that is the dream matchup for a tight end. Dallas Goedert has had a wet dream all year waiting to play up against the Seattle Seahawks. Last week, up against the Cleveland Browns, he was the one bright spot of this game. The Eagles looked bad. Bad news bears. Bad with 7 million exclamation points after it, like your fucking grandmother's texting you and she says, "Great job, honey," and there's like 90,000 exclamation points at the end. That's how I felt about this Philadelphia offense. But instead of nice job, it was awful job. Bad job. Doug Peterson, you stupid motherfucker, with 1 million caps. Dallas Goedert did look good, though. 5 receptions on 6 targets for 77 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, 18.7 PPR points, and 16.2 half PPR points in this matchup. This is the best we've seen Goedert play pretty much all season, besides early on in the season before he got hurt. This matchup against the Seattle Seahawks is amazing. I am back on the Goedert train. All aboard. Choo-choo! Dallas Goedert to the fucking moon. This matchup against Seattle is probably going to put him inside the top 4 in my rankings this week. Next tight end here is Jordan Reed, tight ends of the San Francisco 49ers, who had a bye last week, going up against the Los Angeles Rams in LA next week. Now, we have no idea how the Rams play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers tonight as I'm recording this. Maybe you're watching this tomorrow, and the Rams get fucked, or the Rams just do butt stuff to Tom Brady. You never know. You never know. But with this said, Kittle likely not going to be playing the rest of this season. The only way there's a return eligible for him, in my opinion, and what I've been reading, is that if they're in like some playoff push. I don't think they're gonna make the playoffs this year, guys. I don't know, that maybe that's just me, but I don't think the fucking Niners are gonna make the playoffs. Week 10 at the New Orleans Saints, Jordan Reed had 5 receptions on 6 targets for 62 receiving yards, 11.2 PPR points, and 8.7 half PPR points up against the Rams. I expect Jordan Reed to be able to play just good enough for him to be worthy of an ad this week, and he's a guy you could play for the future as well, considering Reed is just a good fucking tight end who, until he gets hurt, is usable every single week in fantasy football. And final tight end of the video, we got Dalton Schultz, tight end of the Dallas Cowboys, versus the Washington football team on Thursday, Thanksgiving. What a matchup the NFL is giving us on Thanksgiving. Who can't wait to get up in the morning and start watching football? And you get the Detroit Lions versus the Houston Texans, right? And then you get a great matchup of the Cowboys versus the Washington football team. Why does Dallas get these matchups? Why do we have to watch this on the great holiday of Thanksgiving? I have no idea. But with that said, this is being played on Thursday, and Dalton Schultz looks better with Andy Dalton under center. And Andy Dalton is the quarterback now for the rest of the year, likely, unless he gets hurt. Week 11, up against the Minnesota Vikings, Dalton Schultz put up 4 receptions on 6 targets for 25 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, 12.5 PPR points, and 10.5 half PPR points. The Dallas Cowboys won a fucking game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dallas Cowboys won this game up against the Washington football team. So I think Dalton Schultz is actually very much worthy of a waiver wire ad, and if you're in quite the pickle of a situation, you can play him as your tight end for this week. So thank you guys all for watching. Let me know what you guys thought about this video. Were there any players that I was completely wrong on? Are there any players that I missed out on that you guys are looking to add for this week? Make sure you guys have a great rest of your guys' day. I would really appreciate that. I hope you have a fun time watching Thursday night, or not Thursday night football. I'm a dummy. Monday night football tonight. Have a great rest of your guys' day. I love you all. Make sure you guys stay safe. OverlayDFS.com. Again, link down below in the description. I love you all. See you beautiful bastards in the morning. Good boy.